Hi and welcome to this video. My name is Eva. I'm a knitter, a stitcher, a maker and merchant, and this is a video about everything I have been knitting and sewing in September 2024. So welcome along, it's really nice to see you back. You can also find me at cocoandflora.com, which is my online shop for notions, pouches and project bags and things like that I make. And you can find me on patreon.com as Coco and Flora, where I've got a free community as well as some paid content as well. So I've had quite a productive month. I've got some knitting to show you, some dressmaking to show you, and thank goodness the dressmaking has gone a little bit better this month. But let's start with the knitting and a pair of socks. Now this isn't a pair of socks I've knit completely in this month because they're quite complex. So I had actually knit this one last year, about this time last year, and well, one of them, and I had got to here, then I put them down and I've knit the rest this month. So these are the Fairy Glen socks by A Noble Thread. It's a free pattern and it's got this lovely lace repeat with some garter bumps in between, and I think they're so lovely, and I think these ones are very seasonally appropriate because they're all these lovely autumn shades. I got these little 5-gram minis. It was a scrap bag from Kate Celine Yarns, and you got 50 grams worth of yarn in 10 different colours. I've used 9 because I didn't want the black in here because I didn't think it went with the brown, but all of these scraps are the Kate Celine, and the brown is a yarn that I dyed. I dyed 100 grams of bright orange yarn and I realised I was never going to use it. I'd balled it up, so I reskeined it. Somewhere during the reskeining it got tangled, so I ended up with a large ball and a small ball. So the large ball I over dyed and it turned into this lovely chestnut brown, and the small ball I went a bit more reddish, and so that's what I've used for the heels. I've done them in different order on each sock, and it was a really lovely pattern to knit. The reason I stopped last year was because there was a lot going on and I didn't have the headspace for all this lace because it's something I really had to concentrate on. And it's quite funny because one of these socks is much tighter than the other. It just does go over my foot, but it's just a little bit snug, and I think that's really indicative of how stressed I was when I knit the first one, and a bit more relaxed for the second one, because you would think that lace would be a bit more of a loose gauge with it being so open and everything. I haven't actually blocked these. I rarely block my socks, but I'm sure blocking would do the lace some favours. But yeah, it's a lovely pattern. I think this little scrap bag is a great way to try loads of hand-dyed yarns for quite a good price, because you're just getting tiny bits of lots of different yarns. A couple of notes for the pattern. You do an afterthought heel, which is what I like to do anyway, but I moved the placement of mine. I think in the pattern, these rows of garter bumps, it's a knit row, 2 purl rows and a knit row, and the pattern would have you place your waste yarn for the afterthought or the forethought heel in between those, but I moved it so that it was after the bumps, just so it was a lot easier to pick up the stitches. You'd have to, I think if you were going to do it in the middle here, you'd have to remember to do knit stitch on the back half of the foot so that they were easier to pick up, rather than purl stitches, trying to pick up either side of the purl stitches, if that makes sense. So that's one thing to look out for. And the other thing is, it doesn't expressly say in the pattern not to do the lace work on the bottom of the sole, but don't forget not to do it, if you know what I mean. It is the way it's supposed to be, like that, flat on the bottom. So that's just a note to remember to do that. I think I've got the pattern here. I think it was designed to coincide with a kit. I think the noble thread must be a dyer. I live under a rock, so apologies, I don't know, but it's only a black and white picture, but there it is. And yeah, so amazingly detailed for a free pattern, and I think they're really lovely, so I'm chuffed with those. I've got a little bit of my yarn left and a handful of the Kate Celine yarns left, so I'm just going to knit those into my scrappy blanket, and I don't know what I'm going to do with those. I'll probably just save them as contrasts for another sock, I guess. So I'm happy to have one of my unfinished projects ticked off the list now. I've got quite a few lingering projects that I'd like to work on. I did finish another pair of socks, the DK shorty socks I was knitting for my daughter. I forgot to photograph them and everything, but I showed them last time, and the second one is exactly the same as the first one, so it doesn't really matter. But I mention it because I was putting them in a care package for my daughter as she starts her second year of uni, and I asked last time for ideas for care packages, and thank you for all the lovely comments. I've made a list, and I thought at the end of the podcast in the miscellaneous section I could read them out in case you are considering sending a package to anyone, and I'll give you a few ideas that everyone sent in. I have another finished object. I'm pleased to say I have finished my Ranunculus. This is the famous, I would say, pattern by Midori Hirase, and I knit it in the Wonderland Walk yarn, which is a collaboration between Ali of the Little Drops of Wonderful podcast and Lay Family Yarns yarn dyeing company. I got really excited when Ali announced this yarn, rushed over to Lay Family Yarns, bought 200 grams of DK weight yarn. I think this is a superwash merino nylon blend, and then I wasn't quite sure what to do with 200 grams of yarn. I knew I would really like a garment, but that's not quite enough. But I have managed, with elbow length sleeves and quite a cropped length, to get this whole garment just out of 200 grams. I think I had 10 inches of yarn left maybe after I'd woven the ends in, and I've blocked this all out and tried it on, and I really like it. I'm happy with the length. I wanted to have it to wear over dresses, and I think it's a nice length for that. It's really soft and lovely yarn. It's not too easy to see the lace because it's such a dark and patterny yarn, but I think it's turned out really nice. I knit the first size, and I didn't get gauge, so I suppose anything I tell you about sizing and everything doesn't really apply because I didn't get gauge. I think the gauge is 14 stitches and 20 rows over 4 inches. I got 16.5 stitches and 22 rows, so I get a bit confused with gauge, but does that mean it would be smaller? I think so. Even so, like, it's not massively boxy and roomy, but it's a fit that I like. I wouldn't really like it to be any looser really, so I think I will always stick with the number 1 size, I guess. And it's not, I guess it's to do with the fabric. It's still lovely and drapey, but it's not a particularly open gauge as I think the pattern is written for, but I'm absolutely thrilled with it. I'll insert some footage in here. My cameraman is at art college now, so I've had to try and do it myself, and it's not the best, but I'll put it in so hopefully you can have a look at what it's like on. I did knit it on 6mm needles, which is what the pattern suggests. Then the only other thing I've got to show for knitting is one new cast on. I'm trying to be quite restrained. There are so many things I'd like to cast on, but I've got a couple of presents that I want to knit, one for each of my children, and I have, as I mentioned, got a lot of projects that I need to finish off, so I'm trying to be restrained from casting on too many new things for myself. So the next thing I'm knitting is the flax sweater, which is another free pattern from Tin Can Knits. I am knitting this from Drops Alaska in colour number 74. I think it might be called Forest Green maybe, or something like that. My youngest asked me to knit him a jumper, and you know when somebody who isn't really that fussed about knitwear asks you to knit something and you just can't wait to convert them to the joys of woolen wear. So I immediately went and bought this. I think this is quite an economical yarn. It was on sale at the time for about £1.90 for 50 grams, and I got 10 balls, so I've got 500 grams, so that was £19, which I think is not bad for a sweater. And I'm knitting the smallest adult size, so I think it is the small size, because this pattern goes right from baby to XXL adult or beyond. It's really a great size range, and it's a simple raglan with a little garter detail going down the sleeves. So I think I've got maybe 6 more increase rounds for the raglan increases to go, and then I guess I'll try it on and see, not me, try it on my youngest and see how it's fitting. I think I'm just about on gauge, a bit unscientific, but I'm just slightly under, and then if I stretch it a little tiny bit it's the right gauge, so I think it's okay. And he doesn't want it to be too oversized, so I think this should be a good size. It's really nice to knit with, and I like the fabric. It feels like a proper fisherman's jumper, which I think is the look we're going for here. I am using the correct needles for the main body. I think it's a 5mm. I think I was supposed to cast on with a 4mm, but I had a 4.5, so I just did it with that, and I don't think it will hurt to have a little bit of extra room at the neck anyway, although I'm doing that and thinking that looks a bit big, but no, I'm sure it will be fine. It'll be fine. So that's something to work away on. That's only a couple of nights work, so I'm hoping that this will be a nice quick project. Both my children have got winter birthdays, and then we've got Christmas, so I'm sort of prioritising these because it will soon be those winter months before we know it, and I would be glad to have been getting these underway. My daughter wants a boardwalk blouse, which is the same one that I knit myself a couple of months ago, and that's fingering weight yarn on 3mm needles, so I feel like I need to get a wriggle on with that as well. So that's my knitting. I would like to cast on the Summer Lee Colourwork Cuff Club, which I bought recently, and every month for a few months you get a lovely little chart for some colour work on the top of a sock, and then you knit that onto a basic sock pattern. So there's the first one of those was out in September, and it's a little flower design, and it looks a little bit like an Orlakeely flower, which I know my eldest would like, so I'd like to knit a pair of socks for her from that. And so many things I want to knit. I really want to knit the, I don't know if you would say Rota or Rotta cardigan by Anna Shazvad. It is so lovely. I'll pop a picture in. But again, that's sport weight, I think, on fairly small needles, so I feel like if I have too many projects like that on the go, I won't feel like I'm progressing them. So I might instead cast on a chunky jumper for myself, just to get something cosy and warm for the winter out of the way and then look at more longer term projects. So yeah, that's it for knitting for now. Next I will move on to the dressmaking section, and the first thing I made, which I just did this week actually, it's Wednesday today, the 25th, I made this on Monday. It's the Cocoa dress by Tilly and the Buttons. I might put a picture in so you can actually see it on a person, but you can make it as a longer dress or a top, and you can have a funnel neck or just a round neck that you fold under. It's got sort of a 1960s vibe really, the way it goes out into an A-line at the bottom. And I always revert to Tilly and the Button patterns. After my jumpsuit didn't turn out so well last time, I wanted a nice comfort reliable project, and I used a cotton jersey which I got from Girl Charlie, who I don't think are trading anymore, quite a few years ago. It's not quite the recommended fabric for this pattern. It recommends stable knits, so we're more talking pontoroma, lightweight sweatshirting, that kind of thing. I have made these before in cotton jersey and it's been fine, but not with a funnel neck. And I did have quite a job getting this funnel neck to go in. I kept having to trim bits off the neckband and make it smaller and smaller because I guess it was just a bit too stretchy. And at no point during that process did I think this isn't the right fabric for the funnel neck. And I'll get it off the mannequin and show you. So it's supposed to be a tall funnel neck that you then sort of fold over like a cuff. But what I've had to do, because mine was a bit too floppy, is fold it over onto the inside, and then I've stitched it down by top stitching with a zigzag stitch on the outside, and that's okay actually, that's worked out, but it wasn't the best fabric choice for this neckline. But it's a really cozy, lovely make, and I think it would be nice to wear. And I think this fabric is really lovely. I've been saving it for years, and I was very sure that I wanted to knit the Freya dress, which is a very similar pattern by Tilly and the Buttons, but I had cut out, well, I was going to cut out a cocoa out of some blue jersey, but then I realised that was much too lightweight for the project. So as I had it fixed in my mind that I was going to make this, I used this instead, and I wanted to make the blue one to go underneath the ranunculus. But then after I'd made this, in the same day I made another dress to go under the ranunculus, so I had quite a productive Monday with my sewing. Again, I'll put some pictures in of me wearing this. And it's a really lovely pattern. The trickiest part is the neckline, because it's quite difficult with jersey to have a neckline pattern piece, because it very much depends on the amount of stretch in your individual fabric. So yeah, it was took me a while to get the neckline in. I just put a little fox. I make fabric stamps, so I just got one out to put it in the back to indicate the back. I was going to sew a label there, but then I wasn't sure with the way this stands up whether you'd be able to see it, so I just put it down there instead. But yeah, I'll pop some footage in and you can see how that looks. But I love that pattern and I would like to make some more of those and some top versions as well. And so the second dress I made on Monday is my new favourite dress pattern. This is another free pattern, and it's the Orchard dress from Helen's Closet. I'll just show you a little flash of the fabric I used and everything. I was inspired to make this, and in fact I only heard about this dress from Stephanie at the Edible Thoughts Makes podcast. I find Stephanie's style really inspiring. She loves bright colours, but she manages to wear them in a really stylish, classic kind of way, and I think she's got a real talent for matching projects to yarn or fabric in a way, it's just really lovely. So over the summer she had made a lot of these, or a few of these, orchard dresses, and it's an A-line dress. You can make it as a crop top, a sort of normal length top, a shorter dress, or a long dress like a midi length, which is what I've gone for. You can use most kinds of lightweight woven fabric. I've actually gone for a quilting cotton here. It's an art gallery fabric one, which is a really, I think, a sort of posh make of quilting cotton, but I got this as a remnant from Abercorn Fabrics, which is a fabric chain in the UK. It's mostly Midlands and slightly towards the north. Like, I think they've got branches in Liverpool, Manchester. I live in the southwest now, so I don't have one near to me anymore, but I used to love going in there and spotting things like this in their remnant baskets. You know, I think I probably paid £10 or £12 for this, and there was probably 3 meters there, or getting on for 3 meters, and it's got these lovely birds. I'm not sure exactly how much I used because I forgot to measure it before I started, but I've got a fair amount left over, and I was thinking I might use some of these birds in my patchwork items for my shop. I've got a lovely label in there. This took ages, although it didn't really, it was quite a quick sew. I'll put some footage in here now so that you can see how it looks. But I highly recommend this pattern. It was so fun to make. The construction it's just one pattern piece. There's no darts or anything like that, and it just flares out from the top. And then everything at the neck is finished with bias binding, and they also close the arm side and form the straps. And this was a really cool construction where you sewed it into a loop and then attached it, and then you carry on sewing up the straps to close them together. And I love bias binding. I'm an absolute nerd about bias binding. I had a bit of a hyper focus on it a few years ago, where I learned everything I possibly could about all of the ways that you can apply it. I learned how to make it. I used to sell it in my shop. I bought a machine to bias bind make and all the stuff like that. I really love it. So this was really fun for me to do. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't necessarily say it was for an absolute beginner because it is a little bit fiddly applying it, but I think it's very easy to learn with a bit of practice, and it just gives such a lovely result. So I don't think, if I show you this with my ranunculus, I don't think they actually go together as well as I had hoped, because they're very different greens. But I have tried them on and modelled them for you so you can just get the general idea of the silhouettes. And I've got fabric to make more of these, I think. I've got at least 3 different fabrics picked out for more versions, so you might be seeing more of these coming up. And I think that it's a silhouette that I feel really comfortable in, and is probably a good way to go really, as I'm trying to build up my wardrobe, because I really like wearing cozy leggings and cozy stretchy tops, and then you just have to throw a cotton dress over the top or whatever fabric you want and you're sorted. So I think that could be the way forward. So I'll put the range of sizes on the screen for the orchard pattern because I forgot to look it up. I know it's a great size range. I made the size 12, which does correspond to my measurements. It's a great fit. I don't think I'd be able to fit a top that was any thicker than just a cotton top. I wouldn't be able to fit like a knitted roll neck or anything underneath it. I think it might be a little bit tight then, but generally speaking, to just wear on its own or with a lighter weight top, perfect fit. So true to size, I would say. And I think that's about it for my personal making this month. So next it's going to be about my shop and the products I've made for my shop. I've packed my shop full of goodies, and I'll do the list for the care packages. In fact, let's start with that. Oh, back to the knitting. Sorry, I very nearly forgot one of the first things I made this month, which is this little backpack. It's called Susie's Little Backpack. I'll put the name of the designer on the screen. It's a free pattern from Ravelry, and I made this for Kyle, one of my woolly frogs. If you have read my blog over on Patreon, you'll know that he wanted to go backpacking around Europe and he needed a backpack, so I knit him this. Now you may be wondering, if he's gone round Europe, how can I be showing you the backpack? Well, he popped back last night because he forgot his surfboard, so that's why I've got this here, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense, would it? So that's why I've got it, and I've knit it in a little fingering weight mini from Indie Yarn Club in this lovely bright blue, and I've put on a button which is actually from Sea Salt, which is a clothing company here in the UK, and they used to sell fabric and buttons, and I don't think they do anymore, which is a shame because it was gorgeous quality. They still sell clothes, but I don't think they do their fabrics. So it's a little fabric covered button, and I think Sea Salt is appropriate because Kyle loves to surf. I knit this on 2mm needles, which is a couple of sizes smaller than the pattern recommends, and if you knit it to gauge, it comes out at about 3 inches tall. I'd say this is probably about 2.5 maybe, but I did it smaller so that it would fit the frogs. And you construct it, it's a lovely construction. You start with a little garter section and then you pick up stitches all the way round, I think from memory, and then you start knitting in the round and stockinette with a few decreases. You do some yarn overs to make holes for your straps, and I did a crochet chain for my straps. I don't think that's quite what the pattern suggested, but I guess you can do what you like, and you can draw those straps in to cinch up the top, so it's really cute and it works perfectly for backpacking little frogs. But I guess you could do that in any weight of yarn and any size needles to suit whatever toy or creature you wanted to give it to. Sorry, that project was a little bit out of order there, but now let's move on to shop news and the care package. So as I say, my eldest, she's not too far away. She's going to uni locally, but she used to come back at weekends to do a weekend job, which she isn't doing anymore, so I'm going to see her far less often. So I thought, at least seasonally, I would like to send her a care package. So you all gave some great ideas in the comments. So some of these are student specific, but of course you could send a care package to anyone. So a great point that came up was first aid supplies, because that might be something that a student living in accommodation might not think about, and it's the sort of thing you only realise you need when you really do need it, and then it's a bit inconvenient. So we've got things like plasters, multivitamins and things for winter health, supplements, things like that, medicines, Vaseline or lip balms for the colder weather. And then you've got your sort of practical items like shampoo, toothpaste, moisturisers, tissues, all that sort of thing. Then onto the more fun things, you've got your edibles like snacks, mini cheddars, twiglets. I put Maltesers in my daughter's package because I did like a red themed package because she loves red. The socks I knit were mostly red. she's an art student, so I did a red sketchbook and some red pens, that sort of thing. Trail mix, granola bars, cookies, soup cups, and then drinks wise you've got your nice teas, some nice coffees, and then more frivolous things. We've got a £10 note somebody suggested just as a nice little treat. A torch would be a very practical one. I thought a keyring torch, or just key rings in general, because you might have keys to your new accommodation. In our family, some of us have got ADHD, and I've always been in the habit of having giant key rings so that I don't lose my keys. And I recently saw a brilliant idea, which was a big scrunchie which you loop through your key ring, and not only is that so big that you can spot your keys a mile off, but you can also then loop it onto your hand if you've got too much to carry, and your keys, you don't need to hold them. So I thought that was a great idea. Stamps in case they like sending snail mail or they want to write home. Of course, as knitters we're going to include things like woolly hats, socks, mittens, that sort of thing. Sketchbook, pens, notebooks, novels, books to read. Scratch card could be a nice frivolous treat. Fairy lights for decorating the room. Bookmarks, bath bombs, nice little pouch, nail polish, a nice mug maybe would be nice for setting up home. So there's just a few things to consider if you wanted to send somebody a nice package, but of course it's infinite, I guess, and depends on the individual as well and the kind of things that they like. Okay, so on to shop news. So my shop is cocoandflora.com. I sell project bags, notions, pouches. I'm now selling bookmarks, and I have made a video. It's not out yet. I did a video for my free Patreon community as to how I make these bookmarks. I've got a couple of bits of audio in the video that I need to redo, and I can't find my microphone that works with my iPad. So as soon as I've found that, it will be up, and I think if you're subscribed to that you will get an email to let you know if it's up. But I made the video because I just had so much fun making these. I'm enjoying looking for ways to use up the extra bits and pieces of fabric that I have after making project bags and things. And I started experimenting with making these, and I just love it. It's so much fun. I just really love making the combinations of fabrics. So these are going to be in my shop, but if you wanted to have a go at making them yourself, my video just talks through how I do it and what kind of sizes I've stumbled upon and that kind of thing, and how I construct them. All of these, apart from one of them, have got Liberty on the back, because when I first started to make them they weren't coming out straight, and I can sew in a straight line. I've had a bit of practice, and I think it was because I was using a quite loosely woven linen on the back, and it was making it tricky to keep it straight. So I started using lovely Liberty Tana lawn, and that just made everything much more crisp and straight. I really like it, and I just love putting little creatures into things because I just think they give it an extra little pop of personality. Some of them don't have creatures. I'm calling that one Green Tea because it's got these lovely olivey greens and then Liberty teapots on the back. So they will be in the shop, and hopefully you'll be able to see a video soon if you want to about how to make them. And then I've also been busy making notions pouches. I've made a couple of the larger ones which I mentioned last time. I originally designed as sort of hold all notions things, so you can fit your rulers and some knitting needles and tape measures and all sorts in, but I also use them as little sock project bags because they're just right for 2 50-gram cakes or one 100-gram cake, and it wouldn't fit a pattern in unless you folded it up quite a bit. But if you've just got a pair of vanilla socks or something, it's a nice easy thing to chuck into a bigger bag and take about with you. So I've got that lovely kitty, and my other large one is this cute little squirrel. And I just love the golden autumnal colours of this one with peachy fronds inside. And then I've made some smaller ones. I've been using the panels from my Ruby Star panel, that's smaller squares, and then working up some quilt as you go panels around them. So I've got that autumn posy. I've got a little mushroom. I've got this lovely kitten. I've got this turnip, we think, turnip radish. And finally I've got these lovely vintage dishes, like vintage Pyrex dishes. So they're all my smaller notions pouches, so they're all in the shop now. And then when I have boxed all the corners to make those more 3D, I save all the bits and pieces and add a few other scraps, and I make my waste not want not pouches. And I absolutely love this one. I've popped these couple of mice in, and for some reason I just see them as like little 1920s flapper mice, just having a lovely time in La Belle epoque and just having a great, lovely, glamorous life. So I've got this lovely gold around them just to add to the glamour. And this is just a 7 by 7 inch flat pouch. I guess you could fit a small embroidery project in there. You could probably fit a small knitting project in there, or some English paper piecing, or just use it to store your needles and notions, whatever you like. But I absolutely love this one. I've gone a bit more kind of plums and pinks for some of them, and then the golden and mustards, because I'm just feeling very autumnal. And a quick bit of housekeeping for my shop. For some weird reason, when I set up my Shopify, it asked me to do a shipping profile, and I like to do a flat rate shipping so that you know what you're going to spend no matter what you buy. So whether you buy one thing or 10 things, it's the same. It does go over that for what it costs me, but I would just absorb that because I just like it to be clear. But for some reason my website just overrode what I had put in. There was no indication it had done it, and it was kind of doubling the shipping to the US. So if you went to my shop and you are based in America and Shopify tried to charge you like $33 to check out, I'm really sorry, it's back now. My flat rate for the US is £14, so that's probably about $18, I think, and it shouldn't cost you any more than that. I have resolved it now, so it should be absolutely fine. So huge apologies if you spent time selecting something and then it was crazy money to check out. So do go and look again if you want to, because it's fixed now. And thank you very, very much if you did buy something in my last update. It was really exciting and lovely to be able to make some more of those pouches, because the first one sold, because I really do love making them. In frog news, Coco won Employee of the Month in September because he packaged the most orders, and he has requested some baking equipment because he's been foraging for blackberries and he'd like to make a pie. So I do hope to do a bit more with the frogs. I keep just not being able to find the time to make videos and things as I would like to, but hopefully there will be more of that coming up over the next few months. And so I think that's everything for this month. Thank you ever so much for watching. Stick around for some rare footage of September if you would like to, and I wish you so much fun with what you're making. Please tell me how you're getting on in the comments, and I'll catch up with you again really soon. Bye for now.